House Energy Policy Committee will come to order. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Mr. Chair.
Here.
Representatives Houck.
Here.
Barrett.
Here.
Pohl. Tedder.
Here.
Bolino.
Here.
Farrington.
Here.
Griffin.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Lefebvre.
Here.
Lauer.
Here.
Riley.
Here.
Lazinski.
Here.
Dianda.
Here.
Kevla.
Here.
Garrett. Camilleri.
Here.
Elder.
Here.
Green.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Need a motion to approve minutes from the last meeting. Representative Houck so moves. Without objection, so ordered. Members of the committee, I indicated in my opening comments a couple of weeks ago that we were going to have a significant education process, but this particular bill, which I'm going to vacate the chair and go out and present, that I have bipartisan support for, is really not a technical bill. It does not require any technical knowledge of the energy issue. It doesn't require any technical knowledge of the so-called smart meters, the advanced meter technology. So I think this is a simple philosophical question as to private property rights and privacy. So I hope you don't feel pressed to fairly quickly in the process have a bill before you. And it is my intention to have a hearing today and again 2 weeks from today. Back in 2014, there was a hearing that lasted 5 hours. So we have two 90-minute periods, and I'm going to ask all those who testify to limit their comments to about 3 minutes. We want to give as much opportunity for as many people as possible to have their views heard. Thank you, sir. And with that, I'm going to vacate the chair, and Representative Houck, Vice Chair, is going to take the chair so that I can go to the witness stand and present the legislation. Representative Houck. Congratulations, sir. Thank you. I only got to do this one day myself. Mr. Chairman.
Representative Glenn, go ahead.
I appreciate that. I might take a little more than 3 minutes, but maybe not. Mr. Chairman, as I indicated in my opening comments, I don't believe that this issue requires any technical knowledge, any knowledge beyond what we all brought to this building in terms of common sense, a sense of private property rights, a sense of privacy. The question I think this legislation addresses simply is, should a homeowner be forced to have technology installed at their home under threat in the alternative of having to pay $70 up front and $120 a year thereafter perpetually? And are we ready, whoever is our tech, to throw up the video? Are we ready to do that? Mark, is somebody ready or not? That's a simple question. If they're not, I'll proceed.
No, I don't think we're ready at this time,
Okay.
Representative Glenn.
Mark, if you could cue up that WXYZ TV report at some point, I'd like to be able to show that video. But I do think it is as simple a question as that. I know there are going to be all kinds of reasons that people who may testify today express to you as reasons why they don't want the technology installed at their home. Honestly, from my perspective, why they might not want one of these meters installed at their home is none of my business. I don't care. Some people are going to say they think it affects their health. Others are going to argue there's no evidence of that. That's really not all that relevant to the issue before us, in my opinion, because it doesn't matter, I think, from the government standpoint, why a private property owner would not want this particular technology installed. The question is, should they be forced to have it installed? They don't have the option of not having power in today's society, and because our utilities are monopolies, they also don't have the option of shopping around for an alternative electricity supplier who might not require the installation of this technology. The utilities currently allow homeowners to self-read, take a picture of the meter, send it in, call it in, and then on a spot check basis, somebody goes out, once every quarter, once a year, whatever it may be, to make sure that they're being honest in their communications with the utility as to what their meter actually says. So this legislation would say, if enacted, that a homeowner is free to have a smart meter if they want one, and they're free to refuse the installation of a smart meter if they don't want one for whatever reason. That's their business. I think none of mine. It would allow them to continue the practice allowed now of self-reading. The bill provides a penalty if anybody dishonestly reports to the utility and are caught at it. So it offers that protection for the utility against somebody giving wrong numbers. Oh, thank you. And it says if somebody is willing to self-read, they can't be charged anything for making the choice of not having certain technology installed at their homes. If they refuse to self-read, the bill allows the utility to charge them no more than $5 a month or $60 a year, which I think is more than enough to compensate the utility for any residual costs they may have, because I'm told it's like 0.5%. It seems like a very small number of people. I don't know why the utilities just don't allow those people to exercise their freedom of choice. I think you'll see from the witnesses today that there are people who are absolutely convinced that this negatively impacts their health. I'm in no position to judge whether it does or it doesn't. But there's no question that people sincerely and very strongly believe that it does. That's one primary motivation for people not wanting this put on their homes. Another one is simple privacy rights. After having heard about this issue as a first-term legislator from opponents who said, I'm concerned that someday they're going to be able to know what time of day and which appliance I'm using, and I think the very purpose is to be able to bill at a different rate. Like if you use your air conditioning at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in August, it's going to be a higher cost for the use of that electricity than it would be at midnight. But I was surprised when an energy efficiency lobbyist in my initial meet and greets as a first-term legislator was offering that as justification for smart meters. He said this will allow us, for example, at some point in the future to cut somebody's air conditioning off for 15 minutes on a hot afternoon. They'd never know the difference. The house won't warm up significantly if we just cut it off 15 minutes, but we save money. Again, the philosophical question, do you think somebody other than the homeowner ought to have the right to make those decisions, to be electronically hooked up to where they might be able at some point to control your appliances? So privacy rights is another concern that you'll hear expressed today. And then it's something as simple as private property rights. As Americans, do we or don't we have the right to enjoy peaceably residing in our own castle, so to speak? So I hope, as I said, that you don't feel pressed by this legislation. I know it's drinking from a fire hose as to the technical nature of the energy issue. I went through that myself. Wasn't that long ago? I don't think this issue requires you to know anything about energy, but it's simply a philosophical question of who gets to make the decision, the homeowner or a monopoly utility from whom the homeowner cannot protect themselves by searching for an alternative provider in the marketplace. And at this point, do we have that thing ready to play or not?
Representative Glenn, we don't have that ready to
Okay.
play, so maybe
right.
in 2 weeks we can bring it up.
Great. If somebody will just tell me at whatever point we might have it later, then I'll quit asking. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy. I would note that it has bipartisan support. In fact, we went so far as to send it home with staff of Representative Garrett, who has not been able to join us yet, so that she could co-sponsor it, because I remembered that she felt passionately about it from last year. So I think we'll have strong support on both sides of the aisle. I was at a meeting in Representative Kelly's district about 2 weeks ago in Thomas Township. There were a couple hundred people there just about this issue. And I see from media reports it's played out all across the state. I think there have been half a dozen television reports on this issue in just the last 2 or 3 weeks. And the new issue that has arisen that we didn't hear about last year was the report, as reported by the media, the report from some homeowners that after the smart meters were installed, their bills went up, not down. It was supposed to be a cost savings. Now, the other thing I do want to make reference to, and it's in the stack of materials that you have, but Attorney General Bill Schuette issued a filing with the court in which he said he thought the utilities have no constitutional authority to collect these fees, and that his office could not identify any benefit to the homeowner. The Public Service Commission came to a different conclusion. The State Court of Appeals agreed with the Public Service Commission rather than Attorney General Schuette, but it was the Attorney General's opinion that there's no constitutional authority for these fees whatsoever. And so the executive branch came down on one side, the Attorney General came down on another side, and now we as legislators get to weigh in. So with that, I would be happy to submit myself to any questions that members of the committee may have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being here. I guess, you know, where to start on this. I'm not going to weigh in on why someone would want one of the old meters or why. There is plenty. All you got to do is Google smart meters, right? And you're going to find a litany of stuff on both sides. So I agree with you, and I'm not going to delve into the why someone would want to or why not. I'm not going to weigh into potential health risks or not. Couple of questions that I have, though, is, you know, how long realistically is a utility going to provide these types of meters? Are manufacturers always going to have them? You know, you can't buy a conventional tube TV. You can't buy a lot of that technology. So that's one concern I would have. But more than any other, the concern I have is what cost we put on the other ratepayers. Okay, and I go back to choice. I served on this committee the previous term. You know, we know that the people that are exercising the 10% choice are putting about $300 million a year in additional cost to the 90% that aren't putting choice or exercising choice, right? Because there's capacity charges. So there is a cost to the utilities for not having you on a smart meter. Who will bear that cost? That is my concern. Is it going to be the rest of the ratepayers that do have a smart meter? In my opinion, that's not fair. So that I'm all good with saying if you want to have an old meter, great, then pay that cost. So how do we get that real cost? Is that something the Public Service can weigh in on? So I'll throw it out there.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Keevala, my understanding is the lifespan of the old analog meters is something like 50 or 60 or maybe even 100 years. Old basic mechanics. Maybe somebody will correct me. And as to whether or not they're being manufactured, I mean, if we make it a matter of law that they have to remain, somebody's going to fill the void. Somebody's going to meet the demand of the marketplace if the law says people have the freedom to have one. But even short of that, if 99.5% of all utility users are having them removed from their homes, somebody somewhere has got a real big supply, right? Unless they're destroying them. Maybe that's what they're doing. I don't know. I don't have a clue. But it seems to me like somebody's saying, well, we can't find one of these things. They're taking them off 99.5% of all the homes because they say only 1/2% have an objection. So there's got to be millions of them somewhere. And my bill provides, in the case of somebody who says they want to keep an analog meter and refuses to self-read, in other words, to themselves play the role of the meter reader, my bill says that if somebody refuses to play the role of self-reading, then the utilities can charge them $5 a month. That's what it provides.
Okay, so we'll get away, and you're right. They're pulling millions of these meters off, so there's probably a mountain of them somewhere. Okay, so we have a supply side there. We'll ignore that. But go back to the cost. So we came up with, if someone is not going to self-read, or excuse me, yeah, not self-read, then we're going to charge $5 a month. How did we come up with $5 a month? Because I'm not an expert, and I know you're not. I know you're chair. You know more than I do about this. But how did we come up with an arbitrary figure? And what does this increase with inflation, or are we just going to assume that it's just always a $5 cost? And so, again, I've got to believe the cost is greater than that. So where is that additional cost being borne? Because if it's being borne by the utility, then it is being borne by all the ratepayers. People are paying more for someone else to exercise that option. That is my fundamental concern.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of fairly straightforward, easy questions for you. The first one, looking at this stack of constituent communication that it appears that you've received, how many pieces have you gotten? What has been the outpouring of support or opposition to this legislation? What's the ratio in your office since this has come up?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Cole, the reason we held the committee hearing on this as quickly as we did, because my office was getting 30 calls a day on this issue once there was news reports of its being in the process. I think I mentioned already that yesterday I watched the 2014 hearing, which lasted 5 hours. We're going to have two 90-minute periods by comparison. There were hundreds and hundreds, I think 300, 400, 500 people were at that. Just in Thomas Township a couple of weeks ago, a couple hundred people had packed out the place on this issue. I've heard about it my first 2 terms all over the state. I mean, it's not localized to just one area of the state, it's all over the state. And the most recent thing that's been reported that sparked the media's interest was the report by homeowners that once they were installed, their bills going up significantly, doubling according to WILX television here in Lansing. So I don't know. Our office has not, unless my staff advises me differently, our office has not logged how many. I don't recall that I've had anybody contact my office and say, we believe you should continue to force people to have these things installed against their will, even if they sincerely and passionately believe it affects their health and violates their privacy and violates their private property rights.
Thank you. And the second one, if I may, Mr. Chair. That kind of, you led me to my second question about rates and them being programmed. I'm reading through some of these letters about them being programmed, the rates being programmed into the meters versus just recording the usage and the times of day that the usage is taking place in that home. One of the letters states that her meter was programmed for an industrial rate versus a residential rate. So I find it interesting that there's the rates are being programmed into these meters versus being just recording the usage. So
Mr. Chairman, Representative Cole, the utilities, no doubt, when they have an opportunity here, will enlighten us, correct the record of anything any of us have said that is anything less than accurate, and I encourage them to do so. But I assume it would have been an erroneous programming if they had put an industrial rate on somebody's home. But I believe the whole point is, at least it was described to me by the energy efficiency lobbyist, is they want to know at what time of day you're running your air conditioner and your washing machine. And with the intent at some point to charge you more for peak hour electricity as opposed to getting charged for a flat rate as your analog meter might record for the entire day, the cumulatively over the entire month, whatever it is, that now they'll be able to monitor it hour by hour, minute by minute, know exactly what you're doing, when you're doing it, by the surge in power, and be able to charge more depending on what time of day. That's what the technology would allow in the future. The other thing that the bill does that it didn't touch on is it basically, and we may even add some language to this through an amendment, is to establish in law that the data about what electricity you use at your home belongs to you. You own it. And that the utility cannot now, and if we establish that, then some future legislature would have to change it to say that a utility at any point in the future could sell it to a third party. One of the articles you also have in front of you is from Consumers Digest, and it's a few years old, but nonetheless I thought the point was valid, where Consumers Digest was reporting that Google, for example, was pressuring utilities to get their hands on that data so that they then would have new products to offer you, and some people may want those products. One of the things the utilities will tell us, I believe, is that this gives the homeowner the ability to self-monitor his use on an hourly basis and adjust what time of day he does what with electricity. Well, some homeowners may think that's the greatest thing since sliced bread. More power to them. then they'll have the smart meter technology installed. I just happen to believe that whatever percentage it is, for whatever reason it is, that a private property owner in this state should not be forced by a monopoly against whom they cannot protect themselves by shopping around to have the installation of technology that they sincerely and passionately believe violates their privacy, their property rights, or their well-being from a health standpoint.
Representative Dianda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Glenn and Chair, for having a good discussion about the future. I guess my question is this. With the smart meter technology, do we get an actual bill every month off a smart meter? Or are those estimated? Because what we have is we don't have the smart meters in my area of the district or the 1/7 county that I represent. Now, sometimes these utilities send us an estimated bill, and then they give us an actual bill the next month. With the smart meters, do we always receive an actual bill? That's my question.
Mr. Chairman, Representative DeAnda, that's going to be a question that is going to be best placed to the utility reps when they have an opportunity. At least as I have read generally, most of us are going to get an estimated bill under an analog meter, perhaps, and the claim is that the smart meters will allow them to give an actual use, recorded use bill. But they would know the answer to that question far better than I.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, because that's my point, is if the smart meters are so smart, I, as the consumer, want an actual bill every month. I like to have my money in my pocket. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Lozinski.
Hello, Chair.
Hello,
Good to see
Vice
you
Chair.
this morning. So one of my questions is and a clarification. So I know for years, actually, I've had the ability to opt into interruptible power supply pricing, which actually lowers my price. If I allow the utility to turn off my air conditioning, I haven't seen peak pricing raising my price for using my electricity. I've just seen the opportunities to lower my price. How do you see in part of your bill here, making folks aware of, if they choose to opt out, what they will have the potential of missing out on so they can make a full and informed decision in terms, particularly in times of power outages, that they will be responsible for notifying the utility of power outages, when and where and how long. The smart meter technology does provide some safety for vulnerable residents who are on oxygen or who are older and somebody needs to know right away if their electricity has gone out. So what provisions or how do you see that working in your bill?
Mr. Chairman and Vice Chair Lisinski, my bill doesn't address that as a matter of law. Mm-hmm. It doesn't establish a role for the government to play in terms of educating people, but I think the utilities will, as they already are. They'll do it today. They do it every time there's a TV report. Presumably they do it in informational packets that are given to people when the smart meters are installed, advise people of all the benefits, one of them being that they'll automatically know when your power's out. If we ever get the video up, we'll see a 92-year-old lady reported by a television station in Detroit who didn't want that type of technology on her home despite the benefits. And that goes back to my basic point, is that why somebody may or may not want this technology installed, I think is none of my business. If they want it, more power to them. They can voluntarily choose to have it. If they choose for whatever reason, that's their business, in my opinion, not to. They shouldn't be financially penalized. And $70 a month, $120 a year may not sound like a whole lot to some people, but to that 92-year-old lady who got her power turned off because she didn't want one of these things installed, who am I to judge whether or not $120 a year might be a significant part of her Social Security budget? So it's not going to be the role of the government to educate them, but I'm sure the utilities, because they want these things installed, are going to do their best to make a sales pitch to every homeowner.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Representative Lauer. Okay. Representative LaFay? Pass. Representative Barrett? Pass. Okay. Representative Barrington. Farrington, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your bill, Representative Glenn, you have in here underreporting inaccurate information, and you have on here by less than 5%. Does that mean somebody could initially underreport by 4% and always get away with it?
Mr. Chair, Representative Farrington, yes, it would, and you know, again, Representative Keevil asked, where do we get the $5, allowed fee in the bill? It's strictly arbitrary. Just like that 10% cap we had put on electricity choice in 2008, picked out of the air. Nothing scientific about it. So I am certainly open to any concerns expressed by a member of the committee. If they wanted to make that 1%, 2%, 3%, I don't have any heartburn with that. Certainly open to those kind of things. Because we can tinker with those kind of things if that's necessary to win support. The broad principle is we do allow for people to self-report, and that was an attempt just to allow for human error, not intentional misleading. But yeah, the way it's written, somebody could intentionally mislead by up to 4% and not suffer the penalty for misreporting that's provided for in the law, in the statute, if it becomes a statute.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Representative Glenn. Whoop. Representative Camilleri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Glenn, so from my understanding, opt-out already exists under current practices with DTE and consumers. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman, Representative Camilleri. It does exist with a $70 upfront fee and $10 a month thereafter.
So your proposal would have it be $5 as the max?
Only if they refuse to self-read, yes.
So we're really talking about a difference between $5 and $10 a month.
Yep.
So opt-out already exists. The way that you've been framing it makes it sound like it doesn't, but it already does. So the real question is about how much money the person is paying for opt-out fees.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Let's let Representative Glenn talk, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Camilleri, in terms of a real opt-out, as I understand it, the utilities offer you the opportunity to have the new smart meter installed, or what amounts to the new smart meter installed with some part of it turned off. As I understand it, we do not have the opt-out that says you can keep your analog meter, and this legislation would precisely say you could. So that would be the opt-out. And if somebody self-reads like the utilities allow people to do now, then there'd be no charge because there's no additional expense to the utility. If they refuse to self-read, the utility could get $5 a month out of them for perpetuity.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Representative Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vice Chairman Houck, thank you for the masterful way in which you handled that witness. And my tech support people over here tell me we're not going to be able to see the video that we'd hoped to be able to. It was a WXYZ TV report out of Detroit about a 92-year-old woman who objected to having smart meter technology installed at her home, and as a result of what transpired, had her power cut off eventually. And do we have the list? Is this it right here? In order? The first 5. Okay. All right, I'm going to ask Pam Wallace to come forward, who's going to testify in support of the bill.
Can you hear me now? Thanks. Good morning. I'm here to testify a little bit differently than what Representative Glenn said, because I am here about the health portion. I am somebody, and this is something that you do have to have a little bit of information on in order to understand fully. I'm somebody that has a strong sensitivity to electricity. It is an absolute horrible disability to have at this point of life, or at any point of life, because we live in a technological world, and my world, just like yours, is filled with it. What ends up happening to me is when I'm exposed or overexposed and I can't control the level of exposure in my home or my environment, I get nauseous, my blood sugar drops, I have nervous system issues like neuropathy, I get headaches, insomnia. I'm a very, very healthy 54-year-old, recently turned 54-year-old woman. I'm an educator. I've been for 30 years. In the summers, my husband and I run around the mountains of Nepal or in India or in Colorado. We're very physically active people. Fitness and well-being is really important to us. I started noticing these issues as a child. If I was overexposed, spent too much time in front of a television, a screen, went to an electronics store, as things with switched mode power supplies began coming into our environments more. My symptoms are very classic. If you study the medical and scientific reports, my symptoms are very classic. I've been working with a doctor for a number of years on this, who's written letters on my behalf, letting the utility companies and anybody who needs to know this information that I have this condition and that I cannot have, like in this case, I can't have a smart, an advanced meter, whether it's the opt-out meter or the smart meter on my home, and maintain my well-being. Part of that is that I can't control that. Like, I don't have a cell phone. I have actually a Go phone that I've gotten since my father's passed away to check in on my mom, but I have 100 minutes a year. I use it on speaker. I very rarely use it just in case of emergency. I have a corded telephone. I don't have a microwave oven. When I go on vacation, I have to call ahead of time and find out whether the hotel has a cell phone tower by it, whether I'm staying someplace that has a bank of smart meters outside. I was at a campground in Santa Fe this summer and was welcomed by a cell phone tower right behind my tent, which is what I'm having to do now. I'm having to do a lot of tent camping just to take vacations. I make huge modifications every single day in my life, and I have to. I also have to miss out on a lot. My nieces and nephews are in their 20s. We have a family, they have a family text thing back and forth. I miss out on all of that. So it's not easy. I don't like it. I wish I did not have it. I'm sure some people, you may know, people who have a gluten or peanut sensitivity. There's all sorts of things that might be safe for a lot of people that aren't safe for all. So this is something that I have to live with, and I'm going to have to make modifications for my whole entire life. Like I said, I wish to God I didn't have it. It's very costly. So I want you guys to understand that in terms of this medical piece, there's a lot of information out there. Like one of the representatives said, if you just Google smart meters, you can see things on both sides of the coin. From my last determination, I believe the statistics are that 70% of the studies, the peer-reviewed scientific studies that are non-industry funded, show a significant impact on human biology and health. 70% of the scientific studies that are industry funded show no impact. So you have to waffle through a lot of information just to really understand, but I think the fact that there's such contrasting information out there, and also that even when you look at the American Association of Pediatrics have put philosophy out there of best practice when having children use wireless devices and things of that nature. So there's a great body of evidence, and has been for the last 30 or more years, that these do have impacts, that the type of technology used, the wireless technologies, the radio frequencies, all of that has impacts. In my own case, the opt-out meter and the smart meter, they deliver electricity differently. The smart meter actually causes microwave radiation, which I'm extremely sensitive to, and the opt-out meter changes the wave in which the electricity is formatted, and the body does not respond the same way to that. Again, this is very similar to any kind of sensitivity, peanut, gluten. This is what my body unfortunately happens to be sensitive to. So I began my odyssey in communicating this to my electrical provider, DTE, in 2011. I was out west vacationing, and I started to hear about smart meters. I didn't know anything about them. And I read about what was going on and some of the issues with them, and I knew immediately, because of my condition, that I was going to be having to pay some special attention to this. So I began since 2011, obviously, a 6-year correspondence back and forth with DTE on what my condition was, why I wouldn't be able to have them, what I would be able to do in order to work with them so that I could keep basically my well-being. Basically, the conversation started with, oh, I've got 1 more minute left. Okay, I'm sorry. I was told I would be given some more minutes.
Yeah, we're going to give about 5 minutes to everybody to start.
Okay. So let me finish with, I think what's important to understand is that I worked with DTE. I presented them with my doctor's notes, my stories. DTE ended up, through a lot of misinformation, I was told one thing by many different people, another thing by another many people. I want you to understand the process of working with them has been difficult in terms of accurate communication. Long story short, they ended up discontinuing my power this November. They came to the home. I offered to take the locking device that I had put on my meter, or not my meter, my box, which we legally own in Michigan, after a variety of different replies from them saying they would take my meter off, other people saying I was protected, I wasn't getting a consistent answer. They did come out, they did remove my meter, they interrupted my service. I was there, I was willing to cooperate with them. I've made it very clear I was willing to cooperate with them over the years, and they basically told me, I'm turning your meter off anyway. Okay. So even though I offered to comply, take the lockout, I called somebody on the phone who they told me to call and said, I will take this meter under duress.
Ms. Wallace, thank you for your testimony.
Yep,
Well,
they took my
give everybody
meter
else
off anyway. Sorry guys, that was
opportunity.
part of my testimony.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. And next up we have Bill Bathgate from Pinckney.
Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman.
And coming up behind Bill will be Dwayne Roddy. So, Dwayne, if you would get ready to be up as quickly as you can.
Do I just turn this on?
Yes, sir.
Does that work? Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, distinguished representatives, thank you very much. A little introduction of myself. I'm an electrical engineer and a mechanical engineer. I've been working in the industry for about 40 years. In addition to that, I also am a certified information security manager and a certified information security auditor. So I do assessments of security of protocols for a corporation in their IT environment. So they basically, I come in and do an audit, I tell them where the weaknesses are and ask them to remediate them. I hold a top secret security clearance with the Department of Defense. I've done a lot of work with the Missile Defense Agency and Homeland Security. So I've got some experience in managing IT, security, penetration, hacking, and also my background is electrical engineering. In addition, I'm also a FCC licensed amateur radio operator, so I know a lot about RF. Spent the last 20 years doing it. So I want to address one response. Representative, I can't read your nameplate very well. Kivala? Your question regarding the rest of the electronic meter market in the state funding the analog meters. It's actually the flip. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent on this new technology, and that is embedded in the rates that we all pay. Okay? If I'm not using that technology, I'm not subsidizing them. They're not subsidizing me. There's no difference whether I have an analog meter or an electronic meter. In fact, I have an electronic meter, right? I'm paying for their meter with my rates. So it's just a flip of what you think. I'm sorry to say that to you, but I think you've got that wrong. Okay. So let me begin. I do have materials I submitted. Don't know if you have it, but I have extra copies here. I'll try to take as much little time as possible here.
3 minutes at this point, sir.
Yep. Could somebody please hand this off for me? Okay, so yes, hand this out. Okay, so I was asked specifically to address 3 specific questions.
You now have 2 minutes.
So the first 2 questions I had was about the AMI meters, and if you have an opt-out meter or you have a regular meter, a regular electronic meter. Do you have, what's going on inside there? If I have an opt-out meter, can somebody tell me what's going on with my meter electronically without it being an opt-in meter? So this is the circuit board from the Itron meter that we deploy here in Michigan. It has 2 radios on it. The radios are always in receive mode. They can receive a command from the control center and activate the transmitter with no one going to the site. So if you have an opt-out meter, information can still be retrieved electronically without your knowledge. I've also been to several homes where they were told they got an opt-out meter. I have to say most of the time it's correct. But I have found where they were told by the technician they now have an opt-out meter, and I went and checked it with an RF analyzer, and it's still transmitting. Say to call them back. There is no way for the common person to find out whether this thing's transmitting or not. There really is no indicator. No light that goes on, anything. So I wanted to address that. So you people know that even though you have the opt-out meter, you're still sending data. Okay, every single thing you do is recorded on these boards and kept backed up by the battery in the system board. Okay, so it's a computer. It's not a meter. It's a computer. It's got an ARM chip in it, which is the same chip that's used in an iPhone.
Mr. Bathgate, thank you for your testimony, and my apology to members of the committee. I'm still new at this chairman thing myself. I didn't offer you the opportunity to ask questions of Ms. Wallace. I don't know if she's still here, but if any of you have questions of Ms. Wallace or Mr. Bathgate at this point, Representative Keevala.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to comment to the comments that were directed at me, and just to be clear, I understand that utilities have made investments that we've all paid for in technology, and this being just one of many, and I get that. I just want to be clear that any costs that are borne to the utility by people opting back to the analog meters be borne completely on the people doing that no additional costs get borne by the rest of the rate payers. Maybe $5 is adequate. Maybe it's more than adequate. I just want to make sure whatever that charge is fair so that there's not additional costs being borne by those that aren't. And if people, again, I don't want to get into the whys or hows or who wants to opt out. I just want to make sure those costs are allocated to the right people. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Keevala. Representative LaFave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for coming in today. Would you mind, I apologize to any members of the committee that are smarter than I am, but would you mind explaining to me how the old meters work?
Sure.
And how how the new ones do? If
Sure.
You know?
I'm not trying to make it too complex, but the old meters use a very reliable technique called an eddy current. So it's a magnet powered by the amount of current that flows through the meter, and that magnetism increases as you use more power, and it makes the wheel spin. That's how that works. The electronic meters use a digital sensing circuit called a Hall effect sensor. Okay, they're both accurate. There's no difference in the accuracy. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? Mr. Bathgate, you said you had 2 other questions you'd been asked to address. Can you briefly do
Sure.
do those?
And the handout you have in front of you, you have a really interesting diagram on the last page. All of you who have an electronic meter on your home, what's in red is what's going down the wires inside your house. All of you. No exceptions. This is coming from what's called the switch mode power supply. this design does not comply to FCC rules. On your handout you have on page 8-2 is the limits that you're allowed, okay? This red line should be flat as a pancake. There's a defect in the design of the electronic meters that has been known for many years already. No one has mitigated them. These are on every single house. Now,
Mr. Bathgate, what's your third question you wanted to
that was
address?
the third question.
Oh, that was the third one?
Yep.
So you've done 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
And do you know what the lifespan of an old analog meter is?
Well, at least 50 years.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, sir, for your testimony. We'd like to have up now Dwayne Roddy.
Here.
Mr. Roddy,
Yes.
please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I am a fire chief currently in Oscoda County in Luzerne, Michigan. Had many presentations by consumers prior to the smart meter being installed. In my 14 years on the fire department, I've never really witnessed myself an analog meter fire. Within 36 hours of the installation of the smart meter at my home, it actually arced and almost caught my cabin on fire. There was some photos here. It was picked up by the local press up there. A Public Service Commission was made aware of it. I literally have no opt-out capability up there. I mean, Oscoda County is only 8,000 people. The three things that I did determine is that it started at the meter, it probably right at the ground portion of it. It actually arced up into the weatherhead pipe, shot electrical arc out about 2 foot to my wood cabin. Luckily, the transformer about 2 cabins down finally blew. It melted the wires from the weatherhead to the pole in my property. It blew the transformer and finally blew the fuse. Consequently, it did go out. I was home. I was able to shut off all the circuits, which did save electronics and stuff in the house. But again, here 36 hours after installation, I had a fire myself. So I'm not real impressed with the smart meter. I've been able to find out there is no surge protection where there is in the old analog equipment, which with no surge protection does affect your electronics and things in the house as a possibility. Now, again, up north we get a lot of voltage fluctuations. It makes it very difficult. As part of the fire department, we're not allowed to pull any meter from a house during a fire. We have to have consumers come out, cut the wires, or shut it off at the pole. We have to literally to fight fires sometimes with hot wires. And again, I've not seen where the smart meter is shutting off power. I think that's the capability at whatever station they're monitoring, you know, for outages and stuff. But again, out on a fire scene, we still have hot wires that we're dealing with. I did not bring this, but just to give people an example, I don't know if everybody can see it. That's a smart meter fire. Now, at any given time, there could be a supporting cause for it. You know, not necessarily the meter, but we're seeing there the fire is at the meter. Mine itself, the meter itself, it was shorting out the wiring from the meter up, going up. There was an engineering firm that my insurance company hired. I still do not have that report. The moment I do, I will make sure you know everybody has the capability of understanding what happened at my location. And that's about it.
Okay, if John Tatar would make his way up, but Chief, sit still just a second. Have anybody got questions of Chief Roddy? Representative Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, just to back up, at a fire down, thank you for attending the committee from my district. It's thank you very much. So when you arrive at a house fire now, you pop the analog meter off?
No, we're not allowed, even with analog meters, to take them out. That we have to have dispatch, emergency dispatch, notify consumers, and they will send a person out there. And it could be one of 2 or 3, you know, utility companies that we deal with. So I mean, it's always a hazard. You know, I think from my point of view, I'm really concerned. Why doesn't the power company have an ability to notice that there's a major problem, major draw on current? Again, it melted my wires, from the pole to the house. The transformer blew, and then finally the fuse on the pole blew, which finally allowed the power to go off at my house. But again, very dangerous. And if I had not been home to shut off the circuit breakers and some other things that I could do, I'd have lost my house.
Yeah. Well, one would assume that with that surge, it would automatically trigger a shutdown within the system. So
yes, but it did not.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Okay. Chief Roddy, appreciate your testimony this morning. Mr. Tatar?
Tater.
Tater. Mr. Tater, please proceed.
Good morning, representatives and all public functionaries. This may seem a little harsh, but I've taken time out of my daily activity to come to Lansing to explain my discontent. You were hired to handle the political issues of the day, so I would not have to. This issue of smart meter deployment should have been resolved back in 2013 when DTE decided to violate every known law and right of the Michigan citizens to deploy their new technology. Memories are very short about what America represents, so let me refresh. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution guarantees us a republican form of government. Article 6, Section 4 binds all public functionaries to the oath of office that they must uphold the Constitution. And President Trump, in his inaugural address, stated, in this very essence of his inaugural, stated, "What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people." January 20th, 2017 will be a reminder to remember as the day the people became rulers of this nation again. President Trump has changed public policy.
Mr. Tater.
Established the republic. Yes, sir.
I think it's going to be most helpful to the committee if you will address the bill.
I'm working on that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. It is important that you understand and everybody understands the public functionaries of their duties to the public. And the public has a problem with the meters, with the smart meters. And whatever that may be, it doesn't matter. In the Constitution and the Bill of Rights give us certain privileges and certain, not privileges, but rights that are guaranteed to us by the Constitution. And Downs versus Bidwell, a Supreme Court decision, states sovereignty itself is, of course, not subject to law, for it is the author and the source of law. But in our system of government, while sovereign powers are delegated to agents of government, sovereignty itself remains with the people, by whom and for whom all governments exist. DTE is a chartered monopoly, and as such has mandated to provide energy to the citizens of Michigan. Bill 4220, meter choice, is a republic, is part of the republic. Dictates by the utilities is tyranny. There's a court case called Jones versus City of Portland which states heat is an indispensable to the health and comfort of the people, as is light or water. And in the Michigan Constitution, Article 4, Section 51, Public Health and General Welfare, it states, legislature shall pass suitable laws for the protection and promotion of public health. You've hacked some of my speech away, but that's all right. I want to give you a brief synopsis of the brutality of DTE, forcing citizens and their lack of government action as of 2013. Georgietta Livingstone, who's probably going to speak shortly, who has lost her power for 2 years because she could not tolerate a smart meter, and she'll talk to you about that. And at this present time, the Homeowners Association is giving her a hard time. Her Homeowners Association. Arlene McGuire from Southgate, who had her power shut off for 14 days because she locked her meter out not to accept the smart meter, had a fire in her meter box once the smart meter was installed. She is now in litigation at federal court suing DTE as well as several public functionaries from the previous term. Shirley Jones of Dearborn and Robert Piper of Roseville had their power shut off in December when we had that big snowfall because they had a lock on their meter and did not want the smart meter. Took them several days to get their power turned back on so they could have heat in their home. And James Wickhouse of Warren, I don't know if he's here or not, had his water shut off for more than 2 years because he did not accept the water meter. His city and the city attempted to condemn his property because he didn't have water. Many other cases have, and I could spend hours here going over the cases of the people that have had issues with DTE's brutality, but since I don't have the time, I won't.
Mr. Tater, thank you for your testimony. Are there questions for Mr. Tater? If not, thank you, sir. And next up, we'd like to have Michelle Risen from Spring Lake. Michelle, be sure to have the red buttons on. Please proceed.
Good day to each of you. I have a prepared statement, but I think it would be best if I respond to some of the questions that have been asked. The first one I'll begin with is Representative Kivala. Okay, I know. You're speaking of the cost causation factor of the opt-out.
Ms. Risen, if
Yes.
you would direct your comments to the chair instead of to any individual member of the committee.
Oh, I apologize.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
Sure.
Just don't want things to get personal.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so we have this issue of the cost to the utilities, of who is the cost causer in these matters. So we have people who are opting out, and for example, the Consumers Energy cases, it started out as $100,000 would be the opt-out fee, the opt-out IT costs. They've since become $1 million. So instead of the costs that you're talking about today of being just shy of $10 a month, it's almost going to be $20 a month if the order goes through in the existing 2016 electric rate case. And instead of $69 up front, it'll be closer to $200. But the cost causation, so that's the side of the opt-outers. But then you have something that's going through as well in the 2016 case, and that is when you go to change out a meter, for example, this burnt meter here, the base itself, the homeowner's property is not meant to have this new technology. It's not ready for it. So you have to upgrade those bases, those electrical services. And that's about $850 each shot to do that, which Consumers Energy says in their 2016 electric rate case that approximately 0.3% of their 1.8 million base will need that. That's about 5,500 residences, which comes to about $4.6 million. So if you're going to talk about a cost causation and balance things out, that $4.6 million is much greater than the $1 million, the $100,000 that came to $1 million. So if we're going to talk cost causation, that's a good place to go. Secondly, and also, that all came to be because in mid-December, there was a television station that occurred, and there was a woman who suddenly had her power just shut off. Consumers came and took the meter away, and suddenly, with no reason. And so she called up and asked, and it turned out that her meter was registering something that there could be a fire. So they came and just took it off and didn't tell her anything. And when she called, they said, well, you have to get your service upgrade ready. You know, it has to be aware. So that was the $850. There was a wonderful electrician whose wife saw the story and said, you got to get over there and help these people. It's almost Christmas and they have no electricity. So that's how that got settled, and we were able to discover how much it is to actually upgrade the services when they're not ready for the new technology. And that was the minimum. It could have easily been $1,100 or $1,200 to do that. So that's, may I continue, or have I?
Yeah, you got about a minute and 10 seconds left.
Okay. Well, there's, I could talk about the security issues, and I will speak of the Seattle case, the Muckrat case, where Census itself said that if you breach the meters and flutter a great deal of them on and off, they can bring the grid to failure. That's an admission by the meter manufacturer that this is not safe. The second thing I'd like to address is the air conditioning to turn off the meters. There's 100 in the existing SECO case, Consumers Energy case. They are asking for $43 million these days. It went up from $28 million for 178,000 air conditioning switches so that they can turn your power on and off. That's 178,000 people out of 1.8 million customers that are going to get a benefit for being able to turn off their air conditioning. They'll get a reduced electric rate. And they get that switch for free, and all of us will pay $43 million for that. So again, that's a cost causation. And they are dependent upon that feature to have the avoided cost to make that the entire system is cost beneficial, and you don't have to build more generating stations.
Thank you, Ms. Risen. Any questions for Ms. Risen? If not, we'll have next David Sheldon, and behind him, former Representative Tom McMillan. And then after that, we're going to go for the last 30 minutes to opponents of the legislation, including the utilities. Mr. Sheldon.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, representatives.
Ms. Sheldon, pull that mic down towards your...
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I want to touch on a few things briefly. The importance of privacy, why it matters, why the smart meter violates our privacy, why the opt-out meter that's being offered also violates our privacy, and why a utility's privacy policy, quote unquote, is no guarantee of anything and doesn't address the problem. I'd like to say first, as to my own background, I have an MBA and I have a bachelor's degree in physics and economics. I'm certified in software engineering, and I have about 20 years experience in software development prior to my retirement. On the privacy, the importance of it, privacy isn't just a luxury. It's something that allows us to function. We, in order to be able to freely participate in public discourse, to express our opinions freely, maybe to take part in demonstrations or whatever, we need a certain amount of privacy. If everything we do is monitored, it has a chilling effect on freedom of speech, freedom of communication, and then as to our lifestyle and our homes, if everything we do in our homes is monitored, ultimately that can lead to control. What can be monitored can be controlled. Insurance companies may wish to monitor what we do in our homes and tell us if we're not making the right lifestyle choices, we can't have insurance, or they're going to charge us a higher premium. Employers may monitor what their employees are doing in their homes. There's virtually no end to it as this cornucopia of data becomes available. We know in California, for example, utilities are allowed to sell this kind of data to third parties. State law allows it, and they have auctions for who will pay the most money for the data. Now, the smart meter, how does it violate our privacy? Basically because it keeps track of fine-grained data. It keeps track, it has the ability to keep track of minute-by-minute consumption of electricity. I have a packet that I hope you all got a copy of that was published by NISTAR, that's the National Institute of Science and Technology, part of the federal government, part of the Department of Commerce, And it's a 5-page handout, I believe. And it shows a chart on, I think it's page 4 or 5, of what the output of a smart meter looks like. And it makes it possible to identify appliances, when different kinds of appliances are used at different times of day, and from that can be inferred many things about lifestyle, including how many people live in the home, whether the home is occupied or empty, and so forth. Now, the opt-out meter that's being offered by DTE is still a smart meter. It's basically the same meter. They turn off the transmitter, or at least one of the two transmitters that's in the device, the one that sends the information to them. They turn that off, so of course it has to be read manually once a month by a meter reader. But the meter reader doesn't just read it visually. They have the ability to plug into a connector on the front of the meter and download or upload the data that was stored in the meter into their handheld device. Now, we don't know for certainty what exactly data they're going to upload into those meter readers' devices. We have no way of knowing that. DTE has not told us. This is a problem of transparency. Mr. Bathgate alluded to this transparency problem also. We're powerless because we don't know what they're doing, and we don't always trust them to tell us what they're doing or to answer our questions in a straightforward manner. So what we need ultimately, if we're going to have transparency, we need the traditional meter, also known as the analog meter or the electromechanical meter. Everyone understands what its capabilities are. It simply measures our cumulative usage for the month, and it doesn't have memory capacity to store fine-grained usage data in it. It is only read visually by the meter reader, and those are key provisions that are in Representative Glenn's bill, that it be a traditional meter and that it be only capable of being read visually, and that it not have radio transmitter or other means for electrically outputting the information in the meter. So the important thing is that we get the option to have that kind of meter, that we have that choice. Many people will choose to have the smart meter, and we don't have any problem with that. They can, but some people put enough value on their privacy that they would make the other choice and take the conventional meter. I myself have been without DTE service now for 18 months. In August of 2015, they came around, they cut the wires on our home, and they did that because we had refused a smart meter installation. We got a warning letter a few days before that said, you know, if you don't let us come and put a smart meter on your home, we're going to cut your power. So we said, if that's, you do what you got to do, we're not letting you put a smart meter on the house. So they come by and they cut our wires.
Mr. Sheldon, thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Sheldon? Representative Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and sorry, Mr. Sheldon. I'm curious, without DTE electricity, how are you providing electricity in your home?
Okay.
Are you using a generator or
Yes,
solar? Or what?
we're using a generator, and we're using a battery bank. The battery bank is necessary so that we don't have to run the generator 24/7. That's to save on fuel consumption and also not to annoy our neighbors during the evening, night hours.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Sheldon? Mr. Sheldon, thanks so much for your testimony. We'll now hear from former State Representative Tom McMillan, who chaired the 5-hour hearing held in December of 2014. Tom, I had the pleasure of watching the entire 5 hours yesterday afternoon while I was working out, so glad to have you here with us today.
Oh,
say what?
It worked out for 5 hours.
Oh, yeah,
that's
yeah,
impressive.
Well, I need it, I assure you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know the time is short, so I'll get right to it. Thank you for taking up this matter, Mr. Chairman, and for sponsoring this bill. I had a similar bill in previous sessions, and like you mentioned, this is a very simple issue. It doesn't take me long, this testimony. I believe there are legitimate privacy and health concerns with these so-called smart meters. We have a state that has a monopoly. If there was a very robust choice market, that there were other companies that one could specialize in making sure that they give options to citizens who would prefer to have the analog meter. I don't think there wouldn't be a need for a bill. But because we have a monopoly system here, the state needs to step in. And I think this is important. Other states have figured this out. This is not all that complicated. According to an article I read yesterday, that was from last year, Pew Charitable Trust said they cited a NCSL article that said there's 15 states that allow people to opt out of smart meters and to keep their analog meters. As far as there being costs borne by those who don't want to opt out to an analog, you can also, I used to work for a utility, and there's hearings about what's allowed and not allowed in rate base and what is allowed and not allowed in cost recovery. Those are hearings that if it's found that a utility made unwise or decisions, then they could just simply say, we're not going to allow you to recoup that cost. You're going to have to, your shareholders would have to bear that cost.
You mean the Public Service Commission representative?
Right. And I actually testified at one of the MPSC hearings regarding this matter as well. So I mean, that's not a given that anybody would have to bear this cost. The shareholders could bear costs, and I think it was an unwise decision, and could be argued that utilities should not have used this heavy-handed nature that they did. And I did, as you mentioned, hold that hearing, and utilities came forward. I believe Consumers Power at the time, Consumers Energy, testified that they had no interest and they had no plans of imposing and walking on people's properties and demanding that they remove the analog meters. I don't know if that has since changed, but at least one of the utilities had testified back in 2014 that they weren't going to use that heavy-handed measure. So I would implore this committee to support this legislation. I think it's just common sense. And like I said, there's plenty of states that have figured this out. It's not like the sky didn't fall in those states that actually give citizens the ability to opt out.
Thank you, Representative McMillan. Any questions? Representative Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative, for coming in and testifying on this. A couple of things. From testimony back in 2014, were there any promises made that were not followed through on during the testimony that you heard during the 4 or 5 hours by the utilities to, rectify this situation?
Well, I was soon term limited a month later, so I haven't been able to actually follow up exactly on, but there weren't a lot of, there was quite a bit of arrogance by the utilities. There was not a lot of interest in working with citizens who wanted this option. I did, as I noted, that consumers, as I recall, indicated they had no plans to go and impose this on unwanting citizens, but there wasn't a lot of give, so to speak. It was mainly, this is what we're doing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we'd like to have Representative McMillan. Thank you. Steve Kermis, Vice Chairman, DTE Energy. And behind Mr. Kermis, if Lisa DeLacy and Dennis McKee with Consumers Energy would be prepared to come up, we would appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Kermis. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Hawken, Vice Chairman Sosinski. I have submitted written testimony. I'm going to kind of buzz through it because I know you're pressed for time. Would urge you all to read it, but I will skip a piece of it. As of today, 65 million AMI devices are installed in the U.S. with no reported issues of health or security. In fact, in Canada, that was a study done by the California Council on Science and Technology of March 31st, 2001, studying the health impacts of meters.
Give me just a second. I would ask, out of respect for the chair, if you would refrain from groaning or clapping or anything like that. We've got to be fair and hear both sides. Would you proceed, Mr. Kermis?
In fact, our neighbor Canada has now have 100% installation of AMI meters, and there are AMI meters installed in a majority of countries in every continent in the world except for Antarctica. DTE's experience with this technology expands through the last decade, and I'd like to share a few of our experiences. Some of the additional details included, as mentioned in my testimony, but AMI, otherwise known as smart meters, upgrades the grid to improve the quality of electric service and gas service to our customers. The difference between AMI and traditional meters is simple. AMI allows wireless communication between the meter and the utility. This technology started out with the basic expectation of replacing manual meter readers and saving the money associated with that. But it's expanded to much more in the form of grid automation and improving the overall service to our customers and reliability of our grid. As of today, 3.1 million DTE customers have chosen to embrace the benefits of AMI technology. It's 99.7% of our customers are satisfied with their meter upgrades. However, we have opted for those who are uncomfortable with new technology and opting out of the AMI service. And we've had some 8,000 customers opt out of the AMI service, and we have a tariff in order to support that. We talk about, I want to then dive right into the issues. One of them is privacy. We believe AMI has actually improved the privacy of customers because we no longer send an employee into their homes and their backyards. The information we gather, despite what's been reported here from today, and record is nothing but consumption. The exact same information that we recorded prior to the AMI installation. The exact same information you could gather by standing next to your analog meter and just looking at the meter. We can't tell what type of appliance is running or what's on or off or who's home or not home, nor are we actually interested in that in any way. The RF signal from our meters, which has been talked about a lot, is actually very low. You compare it to a cell phone, a Wi-Fi. I checked, there's 4 Wi-Fi signals in this room today, and I imagine everyone in the room almost has got a cell phone in their pocket. Our RF signal is hundreds of times less in strength than either Wi-Fi or cell phones or even the baby monitor, which sits next to my grandson's crib and runs all night long. The other thing is our RF broadcast from our meter actually broadcasts a few seconds a day. A few seconds a day. It's only broadcasting in the evening when it's downloading the information. We talked about the opt-out meter. The difference between an analog meter and our opt-out meter is the disabling of the communication devices. That's exactly true. We have disabled not one, both transmitters in our devices. It's been reported there's no way of telling that. Actually, if you look at the dial, it says opt out where the numerical output of the meter is, and it's very easy to determine whether you're opted out. And that meter with the communication device disabled is absolutely no difference than the digital meter without the communication device. Absolutely no difference. It just allows us to reduce inventory, reduce costs, and less complexity in keeping track of our field installations. With regards to the old analog meters, they aren't manufactured anymore. Nobody makes them. Could we cobble together old meters? Perhaps, yes. But for how long? And when do we quit cobbling together old meters? Are we imposing technology on customers? Yes. Yes, we are. But so did the phone company. You can't use a rotary dial phone in your home anymore. You have to have a digital push-button phone. Several years ago, the federal government said that analog televisions are no longer appropriate to use, and they changed the signal so analog televisions no longer work. You have to have a digital
Mr. Kermis,
television.
thank you for your testimony, sir. Any questions for Mr. Kermis? Representative Barrett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. Can you tell me how you reached the conclusion of the rates that you set for the opt-outs?
That was after an exhaustive hearing at the MPSC. They determined the rates of the opt-outs, not us. And it was based on the cost of service to serve those incremental customers and protect subsidies from other customers.
Would you then say that it would follow that everyone who has a smart meter today would achieve a $10 a month cost savings by avoiding having a meter reader come to their house?
Yes, and they get that benefit through the rate-making process.
So-
This is the most impressive technology in my 40 years of utility service. It not only increases customer service and provides customers more reliability, it does so at a decreased cost, which all customers benefit from.
So every single customer who's on a smart meter today would receive that $10 discount.
Every single customer, period, receives it, even those who aren't on a smart meter.
So I guess I
Now,
don't
that's
see...
$10 discount less the charges associated with the RF meter. But it is, the commission has studied this cost of service in several rate cases and determined it was in fact a prudent investment for our customers and does save them money.
Okay, and can you tell me what the notification is by the utility? What is the requirement by law, and what is the policy of the utility when upgrading a person's meter from an analog to a smart meter?
We send a series of letters indicating, one, where we're going to be in the neighborhood. We generally publish a notice in the local newspaper telling them that we're coming into that neighborhood. We put door hangers on their home.
Is all that required by law, or is that a policy? I apologize, Mr. Chair.
Well, we do provide door hangers. If somebody was missed, I believe that, but we provide door hangers. That is, part of that is required by commission, and part of that is our policy.
And Mr. Chair, I'll be brief. Is there any requirement in law right now or by Public Service Commission rulemaking that requires the utility to advise people that they have an opt-out capability right now?
Yes, and we do that.
Okay, so I mean, I just received notification from a different utility. I'm in the consumers market. I don't know for sure if there was an opt-out provision cited within there. It said, hey, we're coming by to upgrade your meter in your area. I don't recall seeing anything in there that said there was an
I don't know what consumers practice is. Ours is two separate.
I assume you
two
follow the
separate
same rules, though, if the Public Service Commission requires
we
it.
send out two separate communications. The first is notifying we're coming with a smart meter, and sometime later we'll send another correspondence offering the opt-out.
Okay, and that is required by law, you're saying? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And just so everybody knows, we've got two other reps who would like to ask questions of Mr. Dermis, and he will be our last witness today. So the consumers folks will be up first on our continuation of this hearing on March 7th at 9 o'clock to 10:30 a.m. I appreciate all those who came on both sides of the issue. We will read into the record, it'll be recorded that you were here, whether you were for or against, and we'll allow as much opportunity for additional testimony on March 7th as is necessary. And Representative Cole, you have a question, Mr. Dermis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. Two very short questions for you, sir. What type of information can be collected through the meters that are these smart meters that are being installed?
From the customer side of the meter, we collect only consumption.
But what can be collected?
That's all that we collect. There's nothing that we can collect in addition to that from the customer side of the meter. We monitor items from our side of the meter: frequency, voltage, operational factors that don't affect don't interest the customer.
And secondly, is your company creating a hardship for those that wish to opt out through delays in providing an analog meter?
Well, we don't provide analog meters. We provide non-communicating digital meters. And we don't have a backlog in installing those at all.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Lefebvre.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of my questions was, how many people have you guys shut off of power because they refused to get an upgraded meter?
Handful?
A handful for refusing to take the power.
Yeah, just a handful.
Okay, if you guys wouldn't mind getting me an exact number on that. And also, why, and this is actually a legitimate question, why could individuals not keep the meter that they already have?
Those meters are no longer being maintained, manufactured, or serviced.
Okay, but if it's
Remember,
still, but if it's still
your rotary dial
working,
phone.
sure. My grandmother still has a dial rotary phone, by the way.
Won't work in my neighborhood.
Well, that in the UP it still works just fine. So why can't they keep the meter that's working just fine? Is there a legitimate reason why you can't let them keep the meter that's already on their home?
We believe the digital meter provides more service and safer service. We made a decision to change those out. We're no longer maintaining meters. Those meters have to be maintained. Every few years, we have to pull a statistical sample of those in. We have to calibrate them. We have to check them. There's no cost to maintaining all meters.
Okay, let's keep order. Those of you who need to go to the next committee, feel free to excuse yourselves. Also, we have questions from Representative Lauer.
Yeah, real quick. Based on your testimony, you said that you're not collecting data other than usage anyway. If that's the case, would you support codifying that in state law with a bill that said we couldn't collect any other data besides usage?
The customer side of the meter, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Keevala?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, a comment towards to you, sir. I would appreciate if we could get someone from the Public Service Commission here to actually comment on how these figures can be calculated, because no offense to the utilities, but that's my concern, that the right people are bearing the right costs going forward. That's my only concern. I'm not necessarily, no offense, I'm not going to take the words of the utilities. I'd rather have the independent arbiter do that and testify. So thank you.
Representative Keevala, we have scheduled the chairman of the Public Service Commission will testify before us next week. So you'll have opportunity to ask her those questions. We have any other questions for Mr. Kermis? If not, I need a motion to excuse, motion by Vice Chair Lisinski to excuse Representative Garrett, and without any objections so ordered. No further business to come before the committee. We stand adjourned.